Hi, here I am at 145 via Tasso, which is in Rome and is where the Gestapo took over 1,000 prisoners, 700 men, 300 women, and tortured and killed many of them. I thought you might like to see, because this is the only, come on in, this is the only room that's left where you can see the graffiti and the scratchings by the prisoners who were here. The other rooms it's been papered over and effaced, but here you can see a calendar of someone, and there's a sign of a bunny where it was a code name for somebody who was an informer, which was really a problem. And this is really, I won't try to translate the Italian because I can't, but I think this is so moving. Many of the inscriptions say, "Have hope," and one says, "It's better to die a hero at 20 than to live as a coward till 100. There's poetry, there's etchings, and there's notes to family. It's heartbreaking, but it's real. Welcome. Thank you for hanging in there with me. We are here to talk about Behind the Book with Eternal. Hey, I made it go right. You guys are so sweet to come back. I really appreciate it. And, well, let's get right to it, because you saw Via Tasso, which was the Nazi headquarters in Rome. And this time I got to take you inside it. I don't know if you remember last week, but we showed a video of the actual street in Rome where Via Tasso is. And it's very interesting because when you think of Gestapo headquarters or a prison, you think, oh, it's going to be set off in the middle of nowhere and there's going to be barbed wire and guards. And there isn't. It actually was a house that was converted to a Nazi prison during the Nazi occupation of Rome. And if you remember from last week, I'll just show you. This is what it looks like from the outside. It's a tiny little museum now. When I went there, there's nobody in it. You know, I've talked before about how there's a lot of World War II novels and stuff, but not always about Italy. We'll talk about one tonight besides mine. But Italy is kind of called the Forgotten Front. And so when you went there, and I went there with my best friend Laura, we were the only people there, and we were there for like 4 hours. We talked to the guard. He was super cute and nice and explained a lot. And so I can take you inside the cell, and you saw how small it was, and in a way how quiet, and it was almost eerie. You know, it's not like a lot of barbed wire or bars even. You can see what they did, like let me see if I can get this on the picture. They bricked up the windows, they cinder block them, like it's a normal house that they converted to a prison, which is grim enough. But you can actually see, they've set aside the walls where you can see where they broke the windows. And here's the kitchen. The kitchen they turned into a prison cell. And this is what it looks like. You know, really, really, really tiny, a normal house in the middle of Rome. And you heard in the last video, the kids outside, and every cell you go in, every cell has people, the prisoners. There were Jews, there were anti-fascists, all just scratching on the cell walls, anything they could. Viva Italia. They were calendars, the times they had been there and the months and the fear they lived with. And they would say things like, you know, Giovanni was taken today. And they could hear the cries. And as I said last time, the whole neighborhood could. But everybody, there was nothing they could do. They were under Nazi occupation. They were all terrified. There was the intimidation of the fascists first, and then the Nazis when the Nazis came in. And it was just a horrifying, horrifying thing. So when I saw those inscriptions, sadly, I don't speak Italian, but I wanted to learn what they said. So I started to do the research, and this isn't in the book. That's why I kind of want to tell you behind the book, so I'm not giving anything away. But I started to write down about the inscriptions, and when I came home, I did the research, and I came upon this book called Desperate Inscriptions, Graffiti from the Nazi Prison in Rome, 1943 to 1944. And here, this amazing historian, Stanislao Pugliese, who I came to know, and I'll tell you about him in a minute, but he had written down, he had taken pictures of all of the inscriptions, and he speaks Italian. So he wrote what they said in Italian, and he translated it, which was incredibly interesting. And here were two that I thought were so moving that I put them in Eternal because they inspired me. That's what this Behind the Book is. Just like what inspired the book, what is the research that led to the book. The first one was incredible to me because you probably can't see from this, but it is actually Dante. It is actually a quote from Dante. Now imagine these Italian prisoners. The Nazis have rounded them up, taken them to Viesta, shackled them. They put them into cells. There weren't that many cells. There's only like 3 floors of cells. So, and they would have like 30 people in there at a time. They'd be in there together, all terrified, all horrified, trying to console each other, writing "Take heart." And this one person quoted Dante from Inferno. I won't read the Italian because my Italian is just terrible. But it's a very famous part of Inferno. It's Canto 5. And the saying is translated to, "There's no greater sorrow than to remember happy times in times of misery." And I thought, that's so true. And you can imagine how incredible that, the guy's a prisoner and he's writing Dante on the wall. Like the graffiti is the greatest, Italian piece of literature ever. And it's such a true sentiment. Honestly, I don't want to minimize anything, but it even applies to now. When you think about people you are missing through this horrible pandemic, or people you've lost, or people who are sick, it's hard to remember when you're in miserable times. It makes it worse to think of how happy you were. And Dante really got that right. And this prisoner got it. So I thought that was so insightful that I put it in Eternal, and you'll see it there. And the other one, which I thought was so profound, because these people who were thrown in jail by the Nazis had risked their lives to save their country. They were the resistance. They were standing up. They were Italian partisans. They were all kinds of people. There were Jews. They were everybody who just were really trying to fight fascism and then trying to fight Nazism. And there was one anti-fascist, his name was Arrigo Palladini, and he said, "It is easy to know how to live, heroic to know how to die." And that gave me chills when I read it in Stan's book. I was like, that is really amazing. And we'll talk about Stan later, but I did just want to give him credit because we came to know each other. I emailed him. I said, "This book is amazing." I said, "I know you're a famous historian, but I'm writing a book about Italy, and I'm just a novelist. Would you mind reading the book when I'm done and telling me what you think?" And really for accuracy, because it has to be accurate, even though it's fiction. And he said, "Absolutely, I would." And he did. And we'll talk more about him in another video. But thank you, Stan, and those amazing words of wisdom. It's really just incredible. And what I thought was important, just for tonight, and then we'll wrap this up, is that, when you think about the Holocaust, and it's kind of important to pause for a moment now, because tomorrow is actually International Holocaust Remembrance Day. You might not have known that. And especially the Holocaust in Italy isn't that well known. And there's a lot, as I said, there's a lot of books about World War II, but very, very few about the war in Italy. That when you think about the great writing of the Holocaust, and I've read a lot of it, and I read a lot of it, of course, with Philip Roth, which I'll explain to you in another video. There was a person named Hannah Arendt, who was a political scientist, and she was sent to Jerusalem during the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who was a head Nazi. And she watched the trial, and she had a lot of thoughts, and she wrote a book called Eichmann in Jerusalem. And she came away with the thought, and there were some people who find it controversial, but her central thesis was, what is evil? And we think evil, it's a big bad person, we'll know when we see it. But her point was that evil is ordinary. Evil looks like Adolf Eichmann, a little man, wire-rimmed glasses, a bureaucrat. And I thought of that when I was in Via Tasso. Because Via Tasso doesn't look like a prison, like I started to say. It looks like a house converted to a prison. It looks ordinary. And that's what's chilling about it. That's what's really chilling about it. And when you think about the nature of evil, or what evil, has happened throughout history and will happen in the future, because that's the lesson of history. History you use to enlighten the present. That evil you don't always see it coming. It's ordinary. And I think it's especially to think about important because of Holocaust Remembrance Day, and especially because we're talking about Italy.